Hey buds, how's it going? I am MC, and today I'm going to be drawing an astrological sign using random prompts. This was a series that I started on this channel about a year ago now, but that was when I was using graphite exclusively. And recently, thinking about this series, I kind of decided that I wanted to go back and restart it, but use color this time. And I will expand on that a little bit more in the voiceover for this video. But if you do want to see the original video that I started this series with, I think it was for Pisces, I will put that video up in the info card. I'm going to be restarting and continuing the series in this sketchbook that I started doing my color illustrations in. As usual, I have my prompt jar here, and then I have this mug that has each of the 12 astrological signs in it. So first I'll be pulling my 3 prompts from the jar as usual, and then I'll be reaching into the mug to see what sign that those prompts are going to be for. The fun idea that this was kind of inspired by is that it would be completely random, and that whatever sign was assigned to the prompts would just kind of be meant to be. So if I get a fish and then I pull Sagittarius, I'm not going to change it at all. That's just what it's going to be, and hopefully we'll have a pretty fun 12-part series at the end of this. So I hope that I touched on everything that I wanted to, and we'll get into the fun part of pulling the prompts. First one is banana peel. Second one is flying, and the third one is possum. I really like that. I think that's pretty crazy. I don't know where to start. And now all that's left is to pick what sign that this is gonna be for. So let's see who is a flying possum with a banana peel. Capricorn. I'm pretty excited to start this one. So without further ado, let's just get into the drawing. All right, so for the Capricorn illustration, I've got the prompts flying, possum, and banana peel to work with. But before I get into that, I wanted to talk a little bit about why I ended up wanting to restart this series. I had only done the one video to start this series previously. I'm not going to delete that video, so I'll throw that one up in the info card now, and I'll probably link it at the end of the video as well if you want to go watch that. It was for the sign Pisces, and the prompts I pulled were giraffe, jar, and balloon. So I drew the giraffe all folded up in a jar with a balloon on a string that was tied around the jar to make it float, basically. And I do really like that drawing, but it was before I started to learn how to work with markers and pencil crayon. And while I was working on the drawing, I thought it was such a fun idea, and I couldn't really help but think how much more fun that illustration could have been if it was super bright and colorful. And it kind of made me wish that I knew how to use some sort of color medium. I wouldn't say that this series deserves all the credit for making me brave enough to try working with color for the first time, but it was definitely something that gave me a push in the right direction. It was just another idea I had that made me feel a bit like I was limiting myself by just working in graphite. And when I finished the drawing, like I said, I did like it, but I think because it's just kind of how I'm used to working in graphite most of the time, that it was my natural instinct to draw in a more realistic illustrative style than I meant to for this series. And of course I love that style. I've worked really hard to get good at it, and it works with a lot of my ideas and what inspires me. But I think I was picturing something more cartoony for this series, and it was just another thing that made me feel like altogether the finished product wasn't going to turn out the way that I imagined if I just used graphite. It is one of my goals to eventually be able to use color with the realistic illustrative style that I work in already, but I would also love to develop another cartoony, illustrative, silly, goofy, and just fun style I can work in too. I'd like to learn how to not take what I'm referencing so literally, focus a little less on being super accurate, and just be able to have fun and be able to make things my own. And I have no idea what I even want that to look like yet, but I didn't know what I wanted my style in graphite to look like when I started either. While I was figuring it out, there was actually a drawing in an old sketchbook that I worked on for over the course of like a year. It was a drawing of Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman, who I think is the best Catwoman, and I actually think is even the best depiction of any comic book character ever. But I started working on that drawing, and then as I worked on other sketches and tried out new things, every once in a while I would go back to that drawing of Catwoman and change things or continue working on the drawing in a way that I knew I was happy with after working it out on another sketch. And when I finished that drawing and I was finally happy with it, that was basically when I knew I had figured out the style that I wanted to work in. And I still really, really love that drawing. And I guess that's kind of what I hope happens while I'm working in color. But because it's a permanent medium, I just don't have that one illustration that I'll keep going back to, obviously. But one day, after doing a bunch of illustrations, hopefully I'll finish one, look at it, and know that I've figured things out in the same way. And I do think that this possum is a step toward that. I think I really like this guy. When I pulled the prompts possum and banana peel, I kind of instantly pictured the banana peel on top of this guy's head. And then for flying, I had a few different ideas, so I had to think about it for a little bit. But I do think jetpack was probably the first idea that I thought of and just kind of ended up circling back around to. But I also thought about strapping the wings to its arms or back similarly to the way that I drew the jetpack. But I also considered just drawing an actual possum with wings. But like I said, I ended up circling back around to the jetpack because I felt like it just kind of made the most sense if a drawing like this can make any sense. And I had originally drawn the jetpack with some straps and a buckle, but I was having a bit of an issue figuring out the perspective of it. I messed around with having the possum's hands holding onto the straps, but I just wasn't really liking anything that I came up with drawing it that way, so I ended up deciding just to strap him to the jetpack. So I duct taped him to it. And I think the story for this guy ends up being that he was rooting around in a dumpster and came across a jetpack and some duct tape, strapped it on, and pressed a button before he realized what he had gotten himself into, which is why there's still a banana peel on his head. And I don't know if anybody watching this video listens to the This Might Get Weird podcast with Grace Helbig and Mamrie Hart, or watched their videos with Hannah Hart years ago. And here's where I was a dummy and forgot to press record on my camera, so we're a little bit late to the marker inking part of this illustration. It was kind of the first major mistake that I've made while recording a video so far, so it did kind of feel like a milestone for me, like maybe I'm a step closer to being a real YouTuber or something. But anyway, those videos I watched all through high school and college, and I still go back to them now and laugh out loud. But Grace and Mamrie's podcast is so good too. And while I was drawing this, I couldn't stop thinking about the one early episode of This Might Get Weird where Mamrie's talking about her acting coach, I think, and how he's got like a zoo of animals in his house, and one of them is a male possum named Celine Dion. If I remember correctly, they talk a lot about possums on that podcast, and it just made me laugh to think about, and I want to go back and find that episode so I can listen to it again. But anyway, it's very unqueer of me, but I don't actually know anything about astrology. I know I'm an Aquarius, and I know that it's an air sign, even though I thought it was a water sign for most of my life, and that's about it. But I love when artists who have specific styles or original little characters use them to draw each of the signs. I always want to see what the one for Aquarius looks like, and if I like one of the other signs' illustrations better, I get jealous. And I talked about it in my original video for this series that knowing absolutely nothing about astrology was why I thought that this would be the perfect way for me to do my own illustrations for each astrological sign. Completely random and just chosen by fate or something. And I didn't do this in my original video, but I thought it would be fun to do some research about astrology and learn a little something about every sign in each video and see how accurate I think my illustration is. So if you're a Capricorn, you should tell me in the comments if you feel well represented by my illustration. I'd be very curious to know, and I would feel very validated if you do see yourself in it. But anyway, so Capricorns are born from December 22nd to January 19th, and it is an earth sign, which confuses me just as much as Aquarius being an air sign, because why is the symbol a sea goat? But getting the prompt flying is maybe the exact opposite of something that suits an earth sign. But I have drawn this little possum looking pretty terrified to be up in the air, so I think that kind of ends up working out pretty well. Some famous Capricorns are Martin Luther King Jr., Michelle Obama, Dolly Parton, and Edgar Allan Poe. And the internet says that they are hardworking and ambitious. I could definitely see how this guy is ambitious, and maybe a little bit too ambitious. They are loyal and sensitive, but they're not soft. They'll stand up for themselves if you try and take advantage of that sensitivity, and they'll defend themselves and others that they care about. So they make for good leaders. But it also seems like some of these traits all combined can give them reputations as workaholics. Some of the negative traits that I came across are that they can be too serious, and I don't think that is a trait that can be expected too much from any of the drawings in this series. At least I hope not. That's not really the point. Capricorns can also be unforgiving, stubborn, and pessimistic. And maybe I could see this guy being a little pessimistic. He looks like he's pretty much expecting the worst out of the situation he's in. But yeah, I'm sure that the brief descriptions that I've read about Capricorns are just barely scraping the surface of things. And like I said, if you're a Capricorn, you should let me know how you feel about this little guy. Or if you're not one, you should let me know if he looks like any of the Capricorns you have in your life. Again, I really don't know anything about astrology, and I think I'm going to hold off on Googling any of these signs until I pull that sign for a video. I think it'll be kind of fun to draw all of these characters completely blind, and then while I'm editing it, do the research, and I'll get to see how everything compares. But regardless of how close I feel like I've gotten to embodying the traits of each sign, I'm going to stand by the fact that these are all picked at random, and whatever comes out of the prompt jar is meant to be. But yeah, I think I'll be doing another one of these pretty soon. I think it'll be my next video, actually. Partly because I really want to see what this series looks like finished when I have all of the 12 illustrations done, and also just because it's a lot of fun for me. I really love using my prompt jar, and I honestly just want to use it all the time, and I think that this is the best idea I've had for how to use it with a lot of purpose, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm just really excited to see what comes out of it and to see how all of these drawings look side by side when they're done. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. And yeah, that's all I've got to say for this one. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoy the rest of the video and are maybe even looking forward to the next video / drawing in the series as much as I am. Take care, and you'll see me in the next one.